to bend the bird curve.
Thanks for watching them swim around in the...
At the core of that is people. It's a community.
A lot of the conservation finishes on the places that you need both for birds, for people, and for nature.
For a long time, bird conservation focused primarily on breeding grounds. But what we found over time is that the migration stopover locations and the wintering grounds can be just as critical for their productivity and survival as the breeding grounds.
When they're flying over really big urban areas, there may not be many places for them to land and rest. They need habitat, and they need good quality habitat along the way.
When I see these grassroots efforts working with a younger generation of people, some rural communities, some urban communities, some indigenous communities, and when you see that passion and that spark, I think that's what gives me the most inspiration to kind of know that there's something to look forward to in the future with that passion in a younger generation.
I love learning about animals. Yeah, they're really cool. There's a specific kind of ducks that actually really like the stuff eaten. They're called dazzling ducks.
My name is Keith Russell, and I'm Program Manager for Urban Conservation for Audubon Mid-Atlantic, and we are at the Discovery Center in Philadelphia. There are a lot of birds that migrate through the city of Philadelphia. We know from radar studies, which can detect birds and distinguish them from rain and snow, that there are about 50 million birds that come through the city every year. A lot of the millions of birds that pass over this site during the year wind up stopping here at the Discovery Center to rest and feed.
Most of these migratory birds have relatively complex life cycles. They breed, many of them in North America. They migrate down to Central, South America, the Caribbean, spend some time during the North American winter, during the non-breeding season, migrate back up. This life cycle for many of these birds are really on the brink of what's possible. And so any little broken connection around that link, around the Western Hemisphere during that full annual cycle could mean a decline in their population.
Our goal is to conserve the hotels and restaurants that birds need on their migration. It is just fascinating, sort of the challenge of the work that it is needed and how we all need to work collaborative to make those hotels and restaurants there for the birds when they're migrating.
Over 1 billion birds fly into buildings and die in the United States every year, especially during migration, and up to 25 million die in Canada. So here in Philadelphia, we have an organization called Bird Safe Philly, and basically Bird Safe Philly exists to try to protect birds from colliding with buildings. And we have monitoring that's done, and we also manage a Lights Out program, which is designed to basically reduce artificial light at night throughout the city, but especially in the center city district. And that will help to hopefully prevent birds from having mass collisions with buildings, because when we have a lot of light at night in cities, that can attract large numbers of birds. And when we have bad weather conditions, such as a low cloud ceiling and bright lights, that can sometimes lead to mass collisions. Another thing that we do, which is very important, is we manage retrofitting of collision-prone buildings. So we've been retrofitting all of the environmental education centers in Philadelphia, a bunch of schools, and some other buildings, including some commercial buildings, with markings that go on the outer surface of the glass, and those markings prevent birds from flying into them. Generally, when those markings are put up, the collisions decline by like 95%. So the numbers can be really significant when you do this, and we're very happy to be able to do this type of work in Philadelphia. We have a great group of volunteers that help us, and they come from all walks of life. So it's wonderful to involve so many different types of people in this type of work.
Heading down into Whippy Meadow here. On the edge of Philadelphia, we're right along Cobb's Creek. This is part of the Fairmount Park system in Philadelphia. Not super well known, But one of the most impressive things with this space is just how quickly the feeling of the space changes when you start coming down these steps and down the path, down towards the meadow from the road. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I grew up as a nerdy animal kid, but in a city where I didn't think I'd ever get to see any of these really cool animals. So I loved going to the zoo, but I thought I would always have to go to like Alaska to see a bald eagle or to see a beaver because of, progress that's been made where, wildlife has been making some recovery. Things like eagles, like we see bald eagles in Philadelphia now. When I was a kid, that was less common. And now I can take people, I can be a part of like taking kids on a bird walk in Philadelphia and having them experience seeing that bald eagle for the first time, which is really wild to me. And that's really what gets me excited about this work and excited to come out and do this every day.
I've always wanted to help people, and I thought no better way to do that than help restore the environment for not only wildlife to use, but also for people to be able to connect with it in the way that I did when I was growing up.
Most places, like in the urban landscape here, people see green and they assume, okay, that's great. But in reality, this is all, not the best stuff for migratory birds and other wildlife. We'd love to see a lot more mix of native species. So a big part of the effort here on site has been introducing a lot more native tree and shrub species so we can support those migratory birds, provide the resources they need as they're moving through, as well as the resident birds that are going to be nesting here and hanging out all year round.
When we're working with volunteers, they can have a really huge impact by coming down into the space and helping remove invasive vines and other invasive plants that would otherwise crowd out all of the native trees and other things that we planted here. So by removing these vines, we help get the tree all the nutrients and sunlight that it would need. And volunteers are a huge part of that because otherwise it would just be Robin and I. And we have lots of different projects to work on, and this is a really big space. So it's amazing to have so many people come out and help us get that job done.
There's a phrase I love a lot. It is that nothing like conservation that you can walk on. That's what inspires me a lot, is to see these places and how people interact, and then birds as a center of all of that.
So we're right now outside the Mifflin School in East Falls, Philadelphia, and we're gathering around this chimney because very shortly we're going to be able to watch something really cool. We'll see hundreds of these chimney swifts that are gathering, just starting to gather now. They're all going to swirl around and end up tucking into that chimney for the night. And they'll cling to the edge and they'll sleep all in one big colony. So it's a really awesome spectacle to watch. And there's lots of people here to come out and enjoy this evening.
The chimney swift is just one of the native species of birds that breeds now almost exclusively in cities. And these birds are going to eventually wind up in South America. So they have a long, long way to go. When people cap chimneys or tear down buildings that have chimneys, they lose breeding sites. So people have started to create artificial chimneys for them to breed in, to try to help them in areas where there are no chimneys. And they gather in these roosts to feed and get fat so that they can make that journey.
The real caring that people have for protecting birds and protecting the places that they need to thrive, seeing people discovering birds for the first time, to see them experience these animals that they've never noticed before, it's very moving.
There's always some place that's 5, 10, 15 minutes away that you get introduced to new birds, new sounds, new calls, new melodies.
The wonders of nature just don't get old. It's just amazing to see the beauty and the grace of these birds and think about the places that they're going and the places that they have been. And they just keep doing this. It's very simple, but it's just awesome.
The power of birds is how they provide a bridge between people on the everyday life to sort of that big goal that we need to accomplish on the crisis of climate change and biodiversity. it is that bridge to work on the day-to-day to the overall goal to save birds, people, and the planet.